Recording in progress.
Welcome to the conversation with Dr. Christopher Joll. My name is Ansari Zainal Abidin. I'm from the Basmala, Australia, as well as Singapore, Malaysia, Indian Muslim Heritage Studies Facebook group. Welcome, Dr. Chris. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on this conversation. We were very intrigued by your journal articles on Takia and where you shed some light, very new light, on the connections between Ayutthaya and um, Nagore. So what I will do, I will keep this very informal. You had also wished for that, and conversational, and we will try to kind of unpack and let me just give a bit of background on who the audience, target audience are. For Basmala Australia, we've seen a lot of interest among Australians who are interested in Sufism. So they're very keen on the history of Sufism in Southeast Asia, which is nearby. And amongst the Singapore, Malaysia, Indian Muslim Heritage Studies Facebook group, there are 5,000 members. They include ordinary people, they include heritage activists or enthusiasts. They also include academics. So they have an interest in Nagore Dargah, Tamil Muslim history, and so on and so forth. So these are the two main audience actually. And what I will do, I will perhaps kick off with a slide to kind of guide through the discussions. Just bear with me. I'm just trying to set up the tech. Are you able to see my screen?
Yeah, brilliant.
Brilliant. All right. So, welcome to the conversation. And perhaps what I will do, I will first give a bit of a background on Dr. Chris, a very quick background.
The photo's a bit out of date and my beard's got a bit grayer.
Ah, but the same person. So that's all good. Dr. Chris is a New Zealand religious anthropologist and historian. He's currently in New Zealand. I'm in Sydney. And his research and publishing career spans over 25 years and has concentrated largely upon Thailand's and diverse Muslim minority. Now, while Muslims scattered between Central and South Thailand has been his principal ethnographic subjects, his research interests are also interdisciplinary from the disciplines of anthropology, history, Islamic studies, linguistics, and also interreligious research, study, so between the religions of Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, and transnational research on Thailand, Muslim majority, Southeast Asia, and Indian Ocean. His monograph, Muslim Merit Making in Thailand's Far North, which was published in 2011, is based
Far
on his
south. Far south.
Far South, sorry, Thailand's Far South in 2011 is based on his PhD thesis completed at the National University of Malaysia in 2009. Is that UKM?
Yeah.
Yep. All right. And he has authored approximately 30 journal articles and book chapters and runs the Muslims in Thailand bibliography and biography project. His current affiliations are with the Muslim Studies Center at Chulalongkorn University in Thailand and the Religious Studies program at Victoria University of Wellington in New Zealand. Now, Fazan Nawaz was supposed to join us from Sri Lanka, but he's having a bit of internet problems. That's me, Tamim Ansari, Zainal Abidin. Now, let's start with the name. Ayutthaya. Am I pronouncing it properly? Because in high school, when I was studying it for O levels in Singapore, we called it Ayutthaya. But
Ayutthaya, yeah, Ayutthaya.
all
Yeah.
right. Now, Ayutthaya was an ancient kingdom and it had such great prominence that it had other names. known around the world, including Shahnawi in the Persian language, is a Persian name, which one of the meanings apparently is new city. And it was known in the Middle East in Persian-speaking trading communities. Hamza Fansuri in his poems alludes to this when he says Hamza in asalnya Fansuri. Hamza originally is Fansuri, but mendapat wujud di tanah Shahnawi, found my birth in the land of Shahnawi, or it could also mean found my God in Shahnawi, because the mendapat wujud could mean physical birth or a spiritual birth. So, which also means Shahnawi could, be a very spiritually renowned center. I mean, renowned center of Islamic spirituality in that age. And then in Portuguese name Cierno, if I'm pronouncing it properly. And apparently the Portuguese name came from the Persian name Shahnawi. And what can you tell us about this Ayutthaya kingdom in terms of, very briefly,
Yeah.
as a kind of a context?
Yeah, so it would be perhaps more accurate to talk about kingdom, yeah, the kingdom, the Ayutthaya being the capital of the of Siam. And again, your map is a bit misleading. I mean, yeah. So I'm not quibbling with you at all, but
No, no, that's
the map
fine.
is a bit misleading because, as we know, over the 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th century. There were no boundaries. There were spheres of influence that came and went. There was a big reconfiguration of influence following the Portuguese capture of Malacca. So, Thai influence went down the peninsula far further than its present boundary. And in the same way, its influence contracted and expanded to its east, to its west, to its north, depending on how the Khmer were doing, depending on how the Burmese were doing. So yeah, the kingdom of Siam had its capital in Ayutthaya until about 1780 17. Oh goodness, I've forgotten all my numbers now. 1780 1776. Yeah, so with the sacking of the capital. So that was the Ayutthaya was the location of was the capital of Siam. Yeah.
And as we understand, it was ruled by kings. Thailand has seen monarchs ruling it since then till now.
Mm.
And from the early period, the Yuthong dynasty was ruling it. The founder of Ayutthaya is Ramati Bodhi, and it lasted till 1767, a very long, um, what, four centuries,
Mm.
which is
Mm.
considered one of a pretty long period for a kingdom in those Middle Ages.
Mm. Mm.
Um, Now, this is a question because I found some references, I wouldn't say scholarly references, but Wikipedia. So I wanted to ask you, how true is Wikipedia? Because you were saying that Ramat Bodhi was there were seven legends around his origins or background, including Arab, North Island, and so on and so forth. And one of it was he was a Chola from Tamil. Um, have you heard anything? Because it's coming from Wikipedia, but um, and I was very curious.
I just think you need to be very, very careful with these sorts of historical anachronisms.
Mhm.
Um, you know, you're from a mix. It's quite possible that you are from a family where you've got members of a range of ethnic groups on both sides of your family, and maybe they are intensively mixed for a number of generations, and you speak a number of languages, and you feel connections with a number of places. And in certain places, you will emphasize one aspect of your identity. And when people write histories, they may emphasize part of that complex picture which suits the purposes of the author. So I wouldn't be building a skyscraper on those big tiles.
All right. Yeah, no, I'm just throwing this as part of this
Yeah.
discussion because I find this amazing, given that, these seven theories, I would say, about his background in Wikipedia. It sounds very far-fetched
We
because
just don't have the sources from that far back. We just don't have the sources.
yeah.
Yeah, the
So,
sources are very scattered and anecdotal, and they relate to architecture and materiality and um, so Indians who analyze Southeast Asia, and the latest to have popularized this is William Dalrymple. They kind of, you know, we all know, how large the shadow of the Indian subcontinent was on Southeast Asia. We all know that. We all know that. And yeah, it's but the detail, the
yeah,
detail, the detail. You one. If you're going to go out on thin ice, you need to be wearing a wetsuit. So I'm not going to go out onto thin ice without a wetsuit. It's
that's
the middle of winter here in New Zealand, so I've got to
yeah,
worry about this.
that's all good. Now, but what we know that from scholarly research is that Ayutthaya was a multi-religious, multiracial city.
Hmm.
It had Buddhism, Christianity, and Islam. Could you share a bit more on its kind of being? I guess a lot of these trading ports in these routes were also centers of ideas and thoughts, where different religious and different cultural thoughts and what were kind of converging or emerging or being shared or moving in transition. So how was Ayutthaya in that aspect?
Yeah, I mean, I think the article that you specifically wanted me to interact with, and I think that I'm wanting just to mention at the outset that I'm really interested in you pulling out in the way that you are pulling out stuff that you and your audience are interested in. But the article that maybe pricked your interest was one of three articles I wrote over the last few years, and one of them has to do with Galing Muslims in Ayutthaya in the 16th century. That's in the 1500s. And I expanded some of those ideas in the article that you're interested in about Takia and Qadriyyah presence in present day UTR. I've written another article on the origins of the Shia mosque and the Shia community inside the old city, which developed just a bit later in the 17th century. And so I think in the article that I wrote on Galing presence in the UTR in the 1500s, so let's just talk in, yeah, we don't sometimes people get confused with 16th century and 17th century. So let's talk about the 1500s. One of my objectives for doing that, I developed that article from a paper that I presented at a conference in Malacca, funded by the Kazana Institute. I may have got the name wrong. And um, my main objective there was to point out the connections between Ayutthaya and Malacca, and particularly the way in which, because yeah, the where Ayutthaya is located at the moment confuses a few people. They kind of think that port cities have to be Banda Aceh, Surat. It has to be on the coast. It has to be Singapore. It has to be Malacca. It has to be Patani. It has to be Bangkok. But Ayutthaya, I mean, Ayutthaya is, up a river. But there are a number of reasons for, being able to helpfully argue that Malacca and Ayutthaya were very much competing port cities. And this only makes sense when we appreciate that Ayutthaya was where it was because it was so far up a river, a very large navigatable river, and some of the people that are going to be interacting with this video have been to Bangkok. They appreciate how, how large the Chao Phraya River is. It's a bit bigger than the Singapore River, I might add. No dispersions to those in Singapore, but but because it was up this river, it was defensible. You got to have cannons at the river mouth and placed all the way up the river mouth. But more importantly, and again, this throws people off because a lot of us, when we're trying to make sense of stuff, we get caught in the weeds. We don't step back and have a look at the wider context about what space looked like. How did people get around before budget airlines? How did we get around before airplanes? How did we get around before there were steamships? And we could go on and on and on. And the connections between South India, particularly the east coast of the Indian subcontinent, and Malacca with the UTR was primarily because there were an enormous series of ports on the eastern end of the Bay of Bengal that fed portages that sent merchants and merchandise up rivers in canoes, onto elephants, over mountains, back onto boats, canoes down to the coast where you could sail up the river. And so there was a large number of these portages. And so these places were connected. They were connected, and a lot of people. So a lot of the Persian and the Arab, the Persian and the Arab geographers have so much more detail on the west coast of the Malay Peninsula, all the way up to present day Burma. Uh, by comparison, on the east coast, it's really rather scarred, and that's partly because of the shallow entrances to some of the main rivers there. And so people and ideas, they made their way to a UTR from the eastern end of the Bay of Bengal, present day west coast of South Thailand and Burma, that fed into a UTR, which was a large defensible fort. Again, it wasn't, a lot of people used to think it was fruit trees and olive and orchards and buddy fields, and it was primarily agricultural, but it was a large city, size comparable to that of France at the time,
Mhm.
some say. And because it was a center of trade, and who traded there, the configuration of the traders, it shifted over the centuries. And when trade, when Malacca's prominence as a local trading port and a center for Islamization um, changed. There was a reconfiguration after the fall to the Portuguese. Many people chose to base themselves elsewhere, including the primary source materials, specifically mention the presence of Tamil Muslims.
Thank you. So yeah, you were alluding to the time period, the overlapping time period between the Malacca Sultanate um, and the Ayutthaya Kingdom. So, but and these two regions, the Tamil Muslims were traveling. We know from scholarly research that Tamil Muslims were well represented in the Sultanate of Malacca, as well as other uh, uh, ethnicities of the Indian background. Um, and when Malacca kind of was invaded in 1511, um, so the Tamil Muslims, would you say, were still in Ayutthaya or moved to Ayutthaya, or could they have been the continuity in Ayutthaya seems to be a bit longer. But where I'm wondering is, did they start in Ayutthaya? Did they start in Malacca and then move to Ayutthaya? Or is there any research in that?
We don't have any. We don't. I mean, if you want me to make something up, I'm very happy to do that.
No, no, I'm just wondering if there's any
No,
research
no,
into,
I'm
yeah,
only, I'm only, I'm only joking. Yeah,
yeah.
sorry. You might want to explain to your audience that, yeah, if they haven't met a New Zealander, and I hope I'm not the first one, we don't like to take ourselves too seriously. So yeah, so basically, we have no sources that mention specifically Tamil Muslims before 1511 and just
You
before
mean
the
in Ayutthaya?
in Ayutthaya.
Yeah,
And
okay.
Portuguese ambassadors rocked it up to Ayutthaya and explained to the Siamese king what their plans were, and not surprisingly, he had no objections to them taking out his opposition. And that's the reason why the earliest European accounts by the Portuguese, and they mention the size and the location, not location, but the size, the presence, and the size um, of the Muslim population in Ayutthaya. We see another source. We see specific mentions of people referred to as Tamil in some Thai sources, with a bit of a list, including those that were forbidden to enter or come near the Grand Palace. And so we have a number of cycles of edicts banning certain non-Buddhist ethnic groups, trading communities, members of different religious communities coming into the palace, and we see these developing in the later 1500s. So there's a number of sources that tell
Hmm.
us that there was something going on, and then we have mention of, yeah, there's people who mention the presence of Tamils. Well, we know that there was one of the places that people relocated to from Malacca was Aceh, and we there is specific mention of Siamese presence in Aceh. And so there's it's this is the slow task of putting together, aggregating the fragments, because we don't have a kind of a definitive source of a Tamil Muslim from Malacca
Yeah,
who to a UTR with first-hand accounts. We just don't have those things.
those
But
accounts.
they're popping up. We have mention of Indian cloth with Siamese designs being manufactured in South India and being imported into the market in Ayutthaya far earlier than you would imagine that would be the case.
Okay, that's very interesting. And I mean, the reason I'm kind of unpacking a lot of this earlier context is just before jumping into Takia. And one of the things is I wanted to also emphasize, which you have brought up before in our conversations, is that this is a period much earlier than the British colonial Malaya. Um, so when you talk about the Nagore Dargah in Singapore and Malaysia, what we are talking about Ayutthaya is far earlier than that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we're talking mid 1500s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And from now on, I think we can jump a lot more into your article deeper. And also, I would appreciate, like, if you could kind of give us a bit of um, narration, like about the arrival of Takia and also his history into Ayutthaya. It seems to be coinciding with the uh, age of Shaykh Shahul Hameed. Um, I mean, he was born in 1504, and he arrived in 1533 in Nagore, around there, and he left the ball in 1570. But he certainly was on preaching missions across, and you had a very good map of his preaching missions
Yeah, it's
reaching
not
up to.
my map.
Oh, okay,
It's someone else's.
sure.
However tempting it is for me to take credit for other people's work,
But yes, let's start with the arrival and the history of Takia briefly. It may perhaps in about 5 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. And please just interrupt me if you think I'm going on too
No,
long.
no, that's fine. No,
No,
it's
no,
good.
no. Feel free to kind of ask me to pause and clarify things, or ask clarifying questions. That's just
Yep,
no. Yeah,
sure.
yeah. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, so this is it's interesting, isn't it? Because I mentioned earlier that some people, and this is really the importance of doing um, multidisciplinary work. I think I have a pet peeve. I have a number of pet peeves, and one of them is talking about interdisciplinary work. Now, interdisciplinary work can is I have no problems with interdisciplinary work when we talk about anthropologists intentionally collaborating with historians or with geographers or with social linguists or whatever. But there is a tendency these days to be talking about interdisciplinary work in a way that is a way of avoiding saying, I don't really have a discipline, but I'm really interested in all these different things, and I think I'll do them all and try and fake it till I make it. So
Sounds like social media.
that's right. I don't know anything about social media. I actually call it anti-social media, but never mind.
Mm,
I must be one of the few people in the world not on Facebook.
mm.
Um, so yeah, so when we have taken the time, or we've just had the privilege of being able to learn one discipline and then learn another, there are a number of really good things that come out of that. Um, I kind of moved into religious history after many years, doing grounded, slow ethnographic research and being interested in the here and the now, and not listening to what people say and watching what people do, realizing that people don't say what they do when they do what they say, if that makes sense. So one of the reasons why I decided to segue into really understanding this period and this place was related to my ethnographic field work. And when I began to read, what some people call as global history or connected history, not surprisingly, I began to see things in a more global context, and I began to see the connections. And so we were aware of the local narratives in this particular corner of Ayutthaya, just south of the city, of connections with India and the
What was it all across India, South India, or just the
yeah,
trading ports?
no,
Yeah.
absolutely no. I mean,
No
it's
history. Yeah.
well, you know what people are like. It's
Yeah.
like people saying they come from Europe. I mean, could you be a bit more specific, please? Or you come from India. Can you be just a bit more specific, please? Because
No,
I'm
no.
not.
The reason I'm asking is it's more of trying to trace the flow of the goods and the ideas and
Yeah.
yeah.
So there was no detail about this person was from India and he came during the reign of this king. And so, as I began to read about, initially the funnel was reading about any and all Sufi centers of Da'wah around the 1500s. And it really just didn't take me long before I was heading to Tamil Nadu with all and when I compared the timelines, there's a lot of disparaging about timelines, and I think that one of the I've just been working on another project, and it's I won't go into the details of that, but you're all aware that traditional hagiographies of important people spend a lot of time saying, he was born in this place, and these were the name of his parents, and this was the name of his sheikh, and this is where he got his ijazah, and it's who and when and all the rest. And I think what I've discovered is that it's really, really helpful to be developing chronological timelines where we're able to see, what is happening around this time. So, for example, he arrived in present day Tamil Nadu, just 2 decades after this enormous reconfiguration, this geopolitical reconfiguration of trade, of religious networks, of the centers of, certain scholars, relocated. Some relocated to Aceh, some may have relocated to Patani, some may have many relocated to Johor. So we're seeing when we do chronological, when we do these parallel timelines, we really begin to see some connections that maybe we may have missed. And of course, once you know something, you say, oh well, of course that makes sense. But the task of a scholar or an amateur historian. I mean, I'm very privileged to be able to do this job as a profession, but I think there's enormous importance in supporting and encouraging and training a whole range of heritage specialists and local historians to do what they're doing as well as they can or as well as they want to. But when we begin to understand how catastrophic the fall of Malacca was and how significant, how much of a gain that was for Ayutthaya, and about the dispersing of religious networks to Johor particularly and to Banda Aceh. We're seeing all sorts of other things happening in the wider global context, but the most important is that trade with Ayutthaya, which grew tremendously following the demise of its competitor. It led to a whole pile of people going there. And the arrival of Takia, it coincides remarkably well with what we know about the arrival of Shah Hamid, in Nagore. Yeah, so maybe that's enough about that.
All
Yeah.
right, sure.
Mm. So he arrived around the same time. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously he didn't go through immigration and have his passport stamped. I mean, these days you go through many airports and you don't get
yeah.
your passport stamped anymore, which I'm a bit sad about actually, because I really like going through my passport, seeing where I've
Scared.
been, you know.
Yeah. So if
And
they,
we
yeah,
don't know, but we know it's the local histories say he coincided with the reign of this particular king, and so we know when that was. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
So I'm just going to kind of stop the slides and get into a little more because I wanted the slides to kind of build into what we were going to talk. So in terms of Takia, he arrived from India, and you've got a very fascinating story in your article about how a Buddhist monk saw him, and just for the sake of the audience, would you be able to give a short narration of that?
Yeah, and I just direct people to the article. If you look up my name on academia.edu or research.
We will share the links to the article also.
They're
Yeah,
all easy to find, and
yeah,
I'm deeply committed to publishing in open access journals. And those who aren't open access, I've had no editors write an angry letter to me telling me to take the article down off that page. So the outline of the story is that there was an abbot of a wat, of a Buddhist, a monk in charge of a temple. He was an abbot, and he saw someone on the side. He saw someone um, and invited him over. The speed with which he arrived at his temple suggested to the monk that this was a person of religious learning, and I mean, it meets all of the classic troves of Sufi hagiographic accounts of their power, of their karamat. Um, and there was an agreement that there would be some sort of duel, some sort of competition of karamat and hikmat. You're aware of the semantic range of the Malay term hikmat, mysteries, and all the rest. And so the outcome of that was that the abbot had to concede to this person who became known as Takia, and he embraced Islam. And this is one of a number of examples of some of the older mosques in Siam during the Ayutthaya period, which is, probably the technical way to be talking about things in Siam during the Ayutthaya period, but in just south of the center of Ayutthaya, the walled city of Ayutthaya. There are a number of accounts of some of the oldest mosques being based on Buddhist temples.
Mhm. And in terms of Takia, does the word, we were having this discussion, does the word Takia has any connection with Tekke or
Yeah,
Taika in Tamil?
yeah, yeah. So,
The
so
Sufi lodges.
yeah, so yes, it is. It is, and that isn't. I have absolutely no problem with admitting some of the things that I could have developed more. And that's one aspect of this whole story that I should have developed. The presence of this term is well known. It has a wide semantic range, including the Sufi lodge. We don't want to get into the weeds about whether it's
Yeah.
a Persian term or an Arabic term
Yeah.
because there's
Is it
lexical.
Zawiya? Is it Taika? Or it doesn't matter.
Is it a kanika? Is it we have all these terms, and depending on where I am and who I'm talking with, I
Yeah.
use the
So
term.
did he establish the, like, do you think he would have established the Taika or the Sufi lodge alongside the mosque, or
We have
what?
no,
Yeah,
we have
yeah,
no,
yeah,
we have no,
no clue.
we have
But
no information about that. But
yeah.
and as you know, a certain depending on the tariqa that you're researching, so if you are doing work on Naqshbandis, yeah, there's definitely going to be a Zawiya.
Mhm.
Definitely going to be a place for people to do suluk under the supervision of the sheikh. You know that. Whenever you come across Qadriyyah networks that have been large and influential, what are you going to find? What are you going to find?
Well, it depends
You're
on
going to
where they
find
come
makam.
from. Yeah, makams.
You're going to
Yeah.
find makam. You're going to have certain festivals. You're going to have certain configurations of materiality.
So
This is
in terms of
a
Turkey, what was prominent? Was it well, definitely the makam is one. The other one would be the Sufi festivals, I guess. I mean, with the green flags of the Qadriyyah flags that you were
Yeah,
mentioning. Yeah.
yeah. The present makam is there's some garbling in the sources about whether the house of the abbot became the mosque, or the house of the abbot that converted to Islam became the makam. So there's a bit of garbling, and to be perfectly honest, this is top secret. I'm not the most detailed person, but there's and I think it's great to be really celebrating the presence of more than one source that kind of verifies, kind of helps us say with a high degree of certainty about what went on. But it's very, very common in our work, especially if we're working in something that happened in the 1500s, that we don't know. We just don't
Mm.
have. We're working on anecdotal reconstructions based on the best evidence that we have, or what we know about what was going on elsewhere. And this is why uh, the presence of these Qadriya Makam, and this is not the only one, it's not the only Qadriya mosque. This is why the presence of a Makam like this is just so interesting. Yeah. I don't actually have a 3D model of the Makam itself, but you had a photo. It's very, very simple. It's circular. There's a place for people to come in and go around.
And the makam is just next to this mosque or within the same ground, I guess.
Yes, if you were to, it's on the bottom. It's on the bottom right hand corner, or you've just moved it. But anyway, that's it's on. It's. If I sent you a link to the Google map
Yep,
and
I've got
open
it
that,
here.
and that will give you an idea. And so, if you stop there
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Just go out a bit and go to full screen. If you try and get to full screen and give yourself a bit more room. Are you working on Mac or are you working on Windows?
Windows.
Oh, that's okay. I don't know how to help you if you're doing that, but if you try and go to full screen on the top left-hand corner, one of those buttons will go to
Yeah.
full.
Somehow I don't do a lot of full screen.
No, no,
Yeah,
no.
I got it. Yeah. Yep.
So,
Go ahead.
yeah. So what you've got here is so on the left of the picture, you've got a large car park. Now, I mean, obviously that's telling you something, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the car park's organized in a way that makes it possible for not only cars to come in, but buses. Because large buses of people come and they come to do a number of things. They come and so that they wat nazar. I only speak Kelantanese. So they wat nazar, fulfill vows. They'll come with garlands. They'll come and do sidqah. Outside the makam, there's always lots and lots of poor people sitting there waiting for sidqah. There's a number of makam there, but the round makam. So if you go, you've
Yeah.
just in the car park, and then you'll see a rectangular. So that's the graveyard, and
Mm.
the rectangular thing there is makam of other important people that I don't want to get into, and then just past there is the round makam of Dr. Gia. Yeah.
Okay. All
And so
right.
it's organized in that way because arguably, the largest, the makam that has the largest number of pilgrims coming to Ziyarah, Kubo, of what they understand to be a wali, yeah, is in another part of Ayutthaya, but most of the festivals visiting that shrine will come to Dr. Kia, and the perimeter of the makam is arranged in that way because people still do a tawaf. They do
Mm.
it the makam which is
And
which is very very controversial, but they do a tawaf of that makam, and so you may see around the makam there's a place for enough room for people to walk.
yeah.
And it's precisely the reason for that, and so they have a bunch of people primarily associated with another shrine. They come with a brass band
Mm.
and with flags and dressed in the garb of their Sheikh, Sheikh Muhammad Ali Shukri, who died in the early 20th century, are doing a tawaf
Mhm.
around Makam of Tuq.
And this is interesting because in terms of like doing the kind of tawaf and in the makams, you would find that in some of the makams in South India. So it's I mean there's certainly a connection there. And in terms of the Qadriyyah, um, um, you were alluding to, I mean we were having this conversation earlier.
Yes,
Um, you'll find that it is very different from where they come from, or if it is a Qadriya from, say, Lebanon, if it comes from, say, Baghdad, when it comes from the practices, there I would say. And what you find from South India seems to match a lot to what is going on in Takia's Makam and the Masjid. Um, and you're talking about the flags, the green flags, and so on. Can you elaborate on that? Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so I've had the privilege of taking a number of people on tours there, and one of them was I mean, as you know, it's common for a sheikh to have an ijazah for more than one tariqa. Yeah, but this guy's main tariqa was Qadriyyah. When he introduced himself, he introduced himself as a Qadriyyah. He had ijazah for others, and I arranged for him to come to Thailand because there's the Qadriyyah in central Thailand, arguably the most, yes, the longest, the most established tariqat in that part of the country. Although there are different branches, and we do just need to remember whenever we talk about Sufism, every generalization is only generally true about Sufism. And so anyone who's done multi-sited research in the way that I have, or have compared with the ethnographic work that I've done in the amongst the tariqa members in Thailand, and I read other people's accounts, same order, and sometimes, sometimes the same silsila, and we see significant differences. And in the time that I've been coming and going, moving in and out of these networks, which is over 10 years now, even within 10 years, you're seeing changes. And so I think we all know the importance of appreciating the differences between the word uniformity and unity. So there are family resemblances, but the comment that this Qadriyyah Sheikh from Burma, um, who again family had connections with Tamil Nadu. So there's a large Qadriyyah community in Yangon, and many of those ethnically Tamil. And again, mixed with Burmese, mixed with Karen. Again, going to your question about was this person a Chulia? Everyone's mixed. Most people, most of them are bilingual in Tamil,
Mhm.
but this person came to Takia, the Takia Makam, as well as the Makam of Sheikh Muhammad Ali Shukri, and he just says, this is exactly what we do. So in terms of the materiality, in terms of the garlands, in terms of flags, those were,
This is very interesting because even though the route of transmission of the thoughts and the ideas and the practices for Burma could have been different to Ayutthaya, but the source seems to be very similar from Nagore and that sort of.
well, I mean, do you think that Tamils, decided, oh, we're only going to trade with Siam, you know,
They went
and
wherever the winds took
yeah,
them.
and these networks, they come and they go. Some succeed, some fail, some stay. Some go and are converted to local religions,
Mhm.
and some come, with a very clear sense of da'wah. And again, I think the story is very, very important because we do live in a, if you are interested, engaged in anti-social media in the way that I'm not, no one knows how to have a conversation anymore. Everyone, has an argument, and there are all sorts of polemics about the legitimacy of tariqat and what is tawassul and what is tasawwuf and all the rest. And I don't need to tell you these things because you know that already. But again, just getting the zoom lens out of telephoto and into wide angle, what the story tells us is about the nature of Qadriya activism in between South Asia and in Southeast Asia in the 1500s, is that these were at the vanguard of Dawah. These were involved. And again, we have the activism of Dr. Gear is verified in numerous sources that have commented on not only the presence of mosques, but the growth of these mosques, and that these mosques are led by foreigners. And, this is the language of the Portuguese sources that I alluded to earlier. So, and I could, and what I do research in the Andaman coast and islands east of Phuket, which is a very difficult place to do field work. I really, really, I mean, it's such an awful and ugly place to be doing field work just east of Phuket with the sun shining and the coconut trees and beautiful coral. It's a hard life being an anthropologist. You should stick to health. I'm facetious, obviously, but the founding sheikh of this movement. I mean, he was involved in enormously significant revitalization of religious practice in this island east of Phuket that affected all of the Andaman coast. I mean, he started an initiative.
And Shahul Hameed pretty much sowed
Yes,
the seeds
yes, yes,
of
indeed.
this.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So the local polemicists, those who only know how to react and not to respond or to reason. I mean, they will.
And one of the things you just mentioned earlier about how within a 10-year period things can change, and it's so hard to unpack. and especially in social media.
Especially when the founding sheikh he passes away, and you know how legendary succession transitions are.
Mm.
In,
And
in all groups. I mean,
yeah.
family businesses fail because dad's passed away.
Mhm.
You get a new CEO who's absolutely useless. So this is not unique to Sufi movements or to mosques or to Bondok or madrasa or whatever. But all these things are always changing.
Mhm.
And again, yeah, I mean, the present Qadriyyah presence, I'm pretty sure doesn't pay much resemblance to what it was like in the 1500s.
Mhm.
And that is primarily due to the arrival of Qadriyyah wa Naqshbandiya, people who were inducted into the Qadriyyah wa Naqshbandiya having studied in Mecca from the late 19th century.
Mhm.
So, but between this transition from the Qadriya to the Qadriya wa Naqshbandiya late 19th century, the first person was inducted by the famous Sheikh Ahmad Qutb al-Shambasi,
Mhm.
who was based in Mecca, and his Khalifa Abdul Karim. We really just have no sources. We
Sure.
have no sources about what was going on. And again, this is related to the fact that these mosques are continually being renovated, and sometimes, I mean, it's just so, some people they look at you had a map of the mosque up there. People who know the Islamic architecture, I mean, it's a tough call. I mean, it breaks my heart when you go to Bangkok or if you go to South Thailand, you see these old mosques, these beautiful old Malay mosques, and they've been rebuilt like this somewhere the
In
Runij.
Sydney.
No, or, well, well, they're from Istanbul or from North India, and
Yeah.
no resemblance to it. And so it's really difficult for us to make an argument about what was going on the basis of the local materiality about the tropes, because these are just been added to and all the rest.
Mhm.
But just having said that, and I think that you're in a better position to comment about this than me, because I haven't been to Nagore Sharif. So as soon as you transfer the money that we talked about, I will go with you.
Mhm.
I'm only joking. But I mean, I don't know whether any of the architectural tropes that you've seen in this 3D picture from the marathon.
There are some actually. There are some features. Um, Sad to say, we've reached to the end of this
Oh,
session.
goodness.
But the whole purpose of this thing was to kind of really get people introduced to your literature, to your research. So it's a beginning. Um, and also, as you saw, I was unpacking the earlier part of things to kind of pave way into what the really topic is. Of course, the articles, you've described it a lot in detail in terms of Takia's arrival and his,
Mm.
the conversion of the Buddhist monk, and also the Qadriyyah movement's growth. And I guess I hope to do something in future also, but for now, I think this is all the time we have. But certainly, I think it's a good introduction to the research you're doing, and I think there's a lot more to uncover there. And we had only about half an hour of 40 minutes to unpack this. We will never be able to do all of that, but
Less is
certain.
best. Mate. Less is best. Less is best.
Yes, but one of the certain, I mean, there's a lot of things that you've said is very interesting. For example, within a 10 years, so much changes. When talking about 500 years, I mean, you just can't look at something and just say, I know what this is. It's not that simple as it is.
Yeah, but
Um,
but the similarities are also important.
yes,
Um,
and
we don't know where, the continued practice of tawassul specifically, of dawaf, of all these things, but we don't know when they came and the ups and flow, the ebbs and flows over the centuries. We just don't have that.
yeah.
We just don't have the information. But they're there.
Mhm.
There are significant family resemblances across these Qadriya networks
Uh,
that,
uh, and the
that,
sig
that we can say with certainty.
yes.
Family resemblances, yeah.
And the significance of the da'wah being how big it was in that age. I mean, that's a very important thing that you were sharing today. So I think we've got a lot of takeaways. Thank you so much again for the time, and I hope to continue this at some future point. Maybe Nagore, maybe
Sure.
let's see where it brings us.
Send me
Uh,
the ticket.
yes, I will. Thank you.
Hey, thanks so much. I've really enjoyed chatting with you,
Yeah,
and greetings and salam alaikum to everyone who's watching. Yeah. Okay.
thank. Bye.